You may be wondering how the reading Dick just shared relates to the two issues stated in my sermon title, diversity and division. I will address your wondering in the first part of this sermon. Let me rearrange here a bit. In the announcement for today's service, I wrote that we would consider diversity and division that can occur within an individual person, as well as between groups of people, in an attempt to understand and lessen the division that separates us. The information I will share with you regarding an individual person comes from the career I had prior to becoming a UU minister. For more than 20 years, I was a licensed clinical social worker with a private counseling practice in Kalispell, Montana. During my career in social work, I worked with many people who had experienced significant traumatic events in their lives. Of the people I provided counseling to who had been through significant traumatic incidents, all of them had dissociation connected with their trauma. This morning's reading by Dr. Judith Herman comes from a groundbreaking book that was first published in 1992. Her book informed much of my work with clients who were suffering from the ongoing effects of the trauma they had experienced. Often, that trauma occurred many years before they sought counseling. While the reading mentions dissociation, it doesn't provide a good definition of it, which I think is needed. Here's a definition of dissociation from the Sidron Institute that can be found on the website of the American Psychiatric Association at psychiatry.org. Sadly, this definition only includes male and female pronouns. Dissociation is a disconnection between a person's thoughts, memories, feelings, actions, or sense of who he or she is. This is a normal process that everyone has experienced. Examples of mild, common dissociation include daydreaming, highway hypnosis, or getting lost in a book or a movie, all of which involve losing touch with awareness of one's immediate surroundings. As this definition states, all of us probably have brief periods of dissociation at some point in our lives. There are few, if any, negative effects from the mild, common dissociation this definition mentions. People who have been traumatized by an event or multiple events, however, typically have very powerful and lasting negative impacts from the dissociation which was instigated by the events they lived through. Probably the most extreme example of what George Orwell called doublethink is found in people who suffer from what the American Psychiatric Association classifies as dissociative identity disorder. Dissociative identity disorder replaced the diagnosis of multiple personality disorder. Multiple personality disorder first appeared in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 3rd edition in 1980. Keep that in your memory if you would. Some of you may be familiar with the book or the movie titled The Three Faces of Eve. Both the book and the movie are about a woman who, in the mid-20th century, was considered to have multiple personality disorder. In my private counseling practice, I had the opportunity to work with a person who had this diagnosis. I believe the client I will soon tell you about exemplifies the extreme to which diversity and division can exist within an individual. My client, whom I will call Jane, as in Jane Doe, had more than 3 faces or distinct personalities. Her consciousness was quite fragmented. It was fragmented to the point where most of her personalities were unaware of one another. This meant that when a particular personality was conscious and running Jane's life, other personalities were typically unconscious and completely unaware of what was occurring. Each of Jane's personalities had a number of their own distinct life experiences. Each personality had their own likes and dislikes, strengths and weaknesses, as well as fears and even terrors. Several of the personalities perceived themselves to be a particular age that was not the same age as Jane's physical body. Because of the traumatic events Jane was subjected to, compartmentalization and division were essential for her survival for most of her life. If Jane's body was a house, it was as if all of the members of a 3-generational family were living in the house together. But while they were all living in the same house, most of them had no idea the others were living there with them. Most of the family members lived in their own tightly enclosed rooms. When one personality would come out of the room, that personality would have control of the main areas of the house. Most, if not all, of the other personalities would be in their locked rooms, not making a sound and not hearing a sound from beyond their walls. You may wonder if a person living with multiple personalities can have a meaningful and productive life. Jane showed me that it is possible, even though it is often very difficult and painful. What she helped me learn is that the more division or separation that existed between the diverse personalities, the more disruption and problems she experienced in dealing with life on a day-to-day basis. Jane and I both realized relatively early in our work together that in order for her to have a better quality of life, the division between the various personalities would need to be reduced significantly. In the first few months of working with Jane, I could not fathom what it would be like to have one's body under the control of some conscious aspect or aspects of the brain that the person was completely unaware of. I knew about blackouts caused by excessive alcohol intake, but what Jane was dealing with had nothing to do with mood-altering substances. The periods of time when some personality other than the dominant personality would take over could last from a few seconds to a week or more. Over several years of working together, Jane and I were able to significantly reduce the divisions that existed between many of her personalities for over the years of her life. As a result, the level of chaos she had known since early childhood subsided significantly. She gained confidence as she experienced fewer and fewer periods of being unaware of her hours, days, and weeks from the recent past. Knowing what had been occurring in her life offered her a tremendous sense of relief. There were even times when she would feel calm which was a new experience for her. The relief and calm came as her numerous personalities developed the ability to work together on acknowledging and addressing the terror and pain which was associated with the previously unresolved traumatic events of her life. The work Jane and I partnered in required the many personalities who resided in her mind and body to do at least 3 things. First, each personality would allow other personalities to know they existed. An initial step in this direction might be something similar to putting a name tag on the door of their enclosed room. Second, each personality would take steps to share some of their experiences and perceptions with at least one other personality. Third, personalities would establish and maintain trusting relationships with other personalities. As these 3 steps were taken by more and more personalities over time, long-term trusting relationships between personalities developed. Eventually, an amazing thing began to occur. Some of the personalities developed such a deep level of trust that they decided to transition from being 2 personalities to merge together into one. The word that Jane and I used for this merging process was integration. My work with Jane ended when I decided to close my private counseling practice and enter theological school. Jane still had several personalities when our work ended. Because the value of our work together was evident to her, she continued her counseling with another therapist that I had referred her to. While I don't know how her ongoing counseling progressed, it is my hope that all of her personalities eventually united to become one consciousness, one person. At this point, I want to shift my focus from an individual to the collective human community. As I make the shift to the collective human community, I want us to remember how Jane reduced her internal division. Her personal work may provide a guide to reducing division on a much larger scale. The steps we humans need to take to reduce division between diverse groups of people are not identical to the steps Jane had to take with the numerous personalities residing in her body. There are, however, distinct similarities that exist. The first similarity I would suggest is that while all of Jane's personalities lived in one body, all members of the human family, past, present, and future, live on one body, the earth. On this earth body, diversity is natural, normal, and necessary for life to exist and thrive. Diversity makes human life on planet Earth both viable and vibrant. And yet, while diversity is on the whole beneficial, as Jane's struggles demonstrated clearly, division related to diversity is detrimental. In spite of the importance of diversity, most humans generally associate with people who are more similar to than different from themselves. We are prone to avoid others whose beliefs, cultures, languages, gender identities, ages, religious or political affiliation, and social status, to name just a few categories, are unlike our own. In other words, both as individuals and groups, we are reluctant to engage with the diversity that exists within the human community, the human family. We separate ourselves from those we perceive to be other, similar to how Jane's personalities were separated from one another. But there is a very, very distinct difference between Jane's divisions and the divisions that occur between people. Considering humanity as a whole, diversity does not demand division for our survival. Let me say that again. Diversity does not demand division for our survival. Division in the human community quite often occurs because of the choices we make. It is easier and feels more comfortable to relate to those we have much in common with than to extend the effort needed to engage with people who are quite different from us. We may know of others who are quite different than ourselves, but most of us don't usually work to make contact with, learn about, and, this is important, learn from those who are beyond our known or safe community. As I think about the work that Jane did to heal the divisions that existed within herself, I believe the steps she and her personalities took would assist the larger human community in healing the detrimental and even destructive divisions that exist in our community and world today. As Jane did, we need to step beyond what we are familiar with. We need to step beyond our comfort zone. We need to step into the unfamiliar or even the unknown. We need to actively work to make connections with people who are outside of the groups and communities we typically associate with. In 2017, I attended the Ware Lecture at the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly in New Orleans. Brian Stevenson, author of the book Just Mercy, was the guest lecturer at that General Assembly. He told those present in the auditorium that in order to make the world a better place, we needed to, quote, get proximate, unquote, with people in communities who are different than our own. His phrase, get proximate, refers to becoming engaged with individuals and communities that we have little or no direct connection to or affiliation with. And when we engage these individuals and communities, we need to strive to make meaningful connections with the people we meet. Stevenson has dedicated much of his adult life to going into prisons and working with those who were unjustly incarcerated to gain their freedom. I'm certain that prisons may not be where most of us feel called to go. Yet there are many communities we could choose to venture into that could expand our knowledge and our compassion. Let's see, the food bank, Fork and Spoon Cafe come to mind. By taking steps, even small steps, to get proximate, we can do our part in reducing the destructive division that exists between people of diverse communities. If we don't consciously and actively strive to lessen the divides that currently exist, the chaos that is so prevalent in the world today will not just continue, it will continue to intensify. It seems to me there's no better time than the present to appreciate and embrace diversity as we strive to replace division with connection. In closing, I want us to hear again the words of the hymn we sang at the beginning of our service. To me, this hymn is about diversity and unity, not diversity and division. As you hear the words of the hymn again, see if you agree with my perspective. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. My hope for all of us is that we may, as the last line of the hymn states, pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice, strive to make us free. May it be so.